Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer covers the 76ers. Well, Keith, they drafted Jared McCain, a 6'2" guard out of Duke, very good shooter. You asked the question last night about his size and everything, and Daryl Morey he's a smaller guy, very duplicitous to what they have there. Were you surprised that McCain was the guy they went with?
Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Yes and no. The no part is because he's a guy that they liked for a while. He provides the shooting. He does a lot of things. So he was linked to them for a while. The yes part was because there were other people who fell to him. There were guys who were drafted behind him who, were projected to be lottery picks. There was, so I felt as if that when you talk about taking the best person available, someone who is NBA ready, there were some other guys that I felt as if that, hey, they're going to be there and the Sixers are going to pivot and they're going to go after these guys. So that's the one thing that surprised me. But from the most part, he was a guy whose name kept coming up, even though they didn't work him out. But he was a guy that someone must have leaked something to. So his name kept coming up, to people.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of how do they view him with that size? Is he a guy that plays next to Maxey? Is he a guy that, replaces Maxey, comes off the bench? I mean, do they view him as a guy who steps in right off the – they don't have a lot of guys on this roster, as we know. So do they view him as a day one starter?
No, they don't. They don't see him as a day one starter. They see him as a guy who's going to play minutes with Maxey, but they're going to be limited minutes with Maxey. But what they do see him as a guy who, he can play with Embiid, in certain lineups, a guy who can knock down shots and help stretch the floor for him. They're extremely excited about him. They feel like over time he and Maxey can play more minutes together. But at this particular time, they realize that from day one, it could be like a little bit of a nightmare situation going up against bigger guards. But the one thing that they did point out was that when he was initially at Duke, because of his size, he was attacked. But as the season went along, he became a better defender. And they're hoping that the same thing can happen, during his tenure with the Sixers.
So far, they have a lot of cap space. They had this 16th pick, but they've been quiet. It seems that every door that was open has been kind of slammed in their face, Keith. The Paul George stuff, the Jimmy Butler stuff, almost everything that they had been tied to seemingly is drying up. As we enter the draft today, round 2, where do they kind of sit in your mind with their cap space and their ability to make moves?
I think they're still pretty good with the cap space. I mean, you have Jared McCain, like you can make up at least $65 million, right? I mean, that's what they could have in cap space. Well, right then and there, he just took $4 million off of that. So they still have 61. I think the main thing is we really won't know what's going to happen until Paul George makes his decision. From that point, I think that we'll have a better idea. But the thing that I think is right now, I think a guy like, and this would probably have to be through a trade, but Brandon Ingram will probably be there for them, like depending on if somebody else can offer more. But again, when you look at Brandon Ingram, he could be a good addition. But if we're going to be honest, he's probably, of all the guys they want, he's the 4th or 5th option. So, like you said, a lot of different things have dried up for him. So it's kind of not like the ideal situation they want, and they'll try to make do. But to me, he looks like the most likely one because, like you said, no Jimmy. You won't get LeBron. It doesn't look like Paul George is coming, right? So you don't want Zach LaVine. You say you don't want Zach LaVine. You say DeMar DeRozan isn't a good fit. So it looks like the guy, if you can get him, would be Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, and just to see, I mean, we haven't even started free agency yet, but the Knicks have already made one massive trade and then already re-signed a guy that the Sixers may have had interest in. Morey obviously said, "Hey, we want to be the best team in the East." But when you look at them right now, how far away and are there enough cap space and moves to be made to make up the ground of how far they are right now?
I mean, you never know. Like they can do a surprise thing, but right now it just doesn't look optimistic. Like again, he said that, but you see other teams making moves. I mean, you see other teams like trying to. No, they are trying, but you see other teams making it. And when I look at the Knicks team, I feel like the Knicks catapulted the 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, you never know what Milwaukee can do if they get healthy because they do have Dame and they do have Giannis. So let's see how that goes. But right now, I mean, you're looking at the 76ers and you have to say, right now they're the fourth best team in the East, if that.
If that.
Yeah, if that. I mean, because you don't know what Cleveland's going to do, right? So, yeah, it's a lot of issues with the 76ers, a lot of things that they have to address. But, the thing is, the problem is, like, I think that stop saying that, we're number one. We feel like it. Because I feel like when you say stuff like that, maybe some in the fan base are like, come on, man. Like, make a move, make a move. So I just feel like they're putting unnecessary pressure on themselves. But again, they got to make a move.
Yeah, but they don't have anybody on the roster to make a move with. That's one of the, I mean, so I want to get your thoughts on when Morey got hired and so where they are now. People were excited when they got Morey. He was, hey, did a great job in Houston. He got them to some finals. Some people overvalue him, maybe. Some people think, hey, he's overvalued. Why do you – has he done a good job? Was there a lot of obstacles? What do you think his role is in how they got to where they are now?
Here's the thing. When Morey came in here, they were like I think what Morey did is kind of crazy. They were on a certain level, and then they dropped. And he made some moves to get them back on the level that they were on before that 2000, I want to say 20 season, when they lost in the bubble, the first round, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're on that level that they were before, like where they're a second round team, where they were, and then they lost this year. So the thing about it is, yes, he had that magic initially, but he just hasn't been able to do the things that thus far that he was built to do. Now, again, he worked magic, freeing up cap space, doing some other things. But right now, and then you got to give him credit. The stuff that he got on that James Harden trade, getting them those guys, he got the assets that he needed. But now it's a matter of what are you going to do with those assets? And is this team going to be able to get out of the second round?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I like when they got him, I think he was kind of handed like a kind of the Horford thing, the Richardson thing, and then the Simmons thing gets thrown into your lap. So I think he has done a good job of getting them to this point. But now it's like, hey, you got cap space, you restocked your assets. Now you're getting judged, right? I mean, is that kind of where we're at here, or does the organization not see it that way?
No, I mean, like they have to see it that way. I mean, it's reality. Like, I mean, they may say they don't see it that way or not, but it's reality. I mean, all you have to do is go on social media and especially go on there last night and seeing how people were disappointed, not necessarily with the pick. I mean, there's some people who like it, there's some people who don't, but the disappointment it's like, wow, look at what the Knicks are doing. Oh, you mean the Houston Rockets are trying to get KD? Well, last year, look at Boston made these moves, Milwaukee. So, I think you have to see it. And I get it. You don't have a lot of assets. You don't have a lot of other things to give up. But at the same time, it's kind of like they're making moves while the fans view it as if either you can't make a move or you're being patient. And I think, how it is, like we're from the Philly area, like we're impatient people. And I think that's what's going on. So yeah, you have to see it, and you have to see it.
Yeah, I mean, and you just mentioned, Boston made 2 trades last year getting Drew Holiday and Porzingis, and people say, well, how come, he didn't have the foresight? And at some point you have to say, well, what did the Sixers really have to make the moves to get players of that ilk? That was one of the issues is they don't really have a lot right now that were movable parts, especially last year. I mean, you had a team last year that was crippled by that Harris contract for the last 5 years with a bunch of, well, before the Harden thing, you didn't know what was happening there. So last year was almost like, hey, we'll just take a shot with this team 1 year and now try to start over. So now they're at the starting over point because they have nobody on the roster, and yet it doesn't seem that there's anybody out there to bring in. So how do you fill this roster?
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I mean, I think that, we talked about it before. I think there are 3 guys that you would like to come back, right? You want to see if they can come back. And we're talking about Nico Batum. You're talking about not Buddy Hield, Kelly Oubre, and maybe Kyle Lowry, maybe, depending on what you can get. But I think like a guy, Caldwell Pope, right? You have to go after him, Contavious Caldwell Pope. Like, try to see what you can get for him. But again, I think a lot of this is going to happen once they realize what happens with Paul George. Not just for the Sixers because of him, but I think there's going to become a domino effect, right? There are going to be certain guys who are free agents saying, this is where I want to go. But the problem with the Sixers in regards to rebuilding this season, there's not a lot out there. Like, this is a weak free agent class.
Yeah.
I mean, the number 1 free agent out there is Tyrese Maxey. The number 2 free agent out there is Paul George. Number 3 is LeBron James. Number 4 is James Harden, a guy that you already lost. You know what I mean? Do you want to bring him back? And then number 7 in this whole class is Tobias Harris, a guy that you don't want. So, you know what I mean? Or, I shouldn't say they don't want him, but you know how it ended, right? You never know what can happen tomorrow if they don't get anyone. But at the same time, it's a tough one where where teams like New York, what they did is they were able to acquire OG's bird rights. And then they were able to give him that max salary that no one else could. The same thing with Pascal Siakam. So right now, what you're doing is these guys they are free agents now, but the teams can give them more money than everyone else, where you have to compete against that. So, and you have a lot of cap space, but oftentimes what they do is they'll use your cap space to get what they want from the team that just traded for them, because it would look bad on that team to not pay them because they gave up so many assets to get them. So with that being said, it's a tough time for the Sixers, and they are going big star hunting. But the problem is Jimmy Butler says he's not leaving. He doesn't want to be traded. Paul George can go wherever he wants. And then, some other guys have options. So that's the dilemma and the problem that the Sixers are facing right now. So it's hard to say, okay, they're going to do this and they're going to do that with the roster, right? But, they just have to sit back and wait, man. They do. They have to sit back and wait.
Did they, in your mind, try to do something with 16 yesterday and just couldn't find anything and ended up just having to take a player?
Well, they were trying to do something. There was a couple of teams. There was a point where, they had a couple opportunities to trade out of the draft and get a player, and other opportunities to move back. But what happened is they were in love with this McCann guy. And you got to a point where they're saying that, as they saw how things were playing out and how he was coming to them, they just felt like, he was too good to pass up at number 16. So, they could have had something. But then there are some people from you talk to some people around the league and they say, well, look, yeah, you can get something with the 16th pick, but it may not have been as impactful as you thought you can get. And the only reason why, there's other teams who had better draft picks who had cap space or something like, you know what I mean? So it's like that's what you're competing against. And so, but I feel like, according to Daryl Morey yesterday, they did have some opportunities and some options, but they felt like this young guy was better than the things that they had out there.
Well, round 2 at 4 o'clock today. They have picked 41, so I guess they have the ability to spin something. And then free agency starts Sunday, and I guess that's when the first dominoes will start to fall. Sunday, some point, we should have a better, clearer idea of what this offseason could look like.
Yeah, oh, we definitely will. I mean, we'll actually have a better idea of what this offseason could look like. I think the dominoes are going to fall on the 29th when Paul George either opts in or out, right? But then that's the time when LeBron James, well, we already know, probably have a great idea what LeBron James is going to do, right? But on the 30th, yeah, we'll have a good idea. Now, I think that this free agency, though, will probably be one of those things where a lot of the big name guys aren't going to sign initially just because they're waiting to see what other people do. You know what I mean? Like what frees up. And this year, it is Paul George. For the Sixers, I think Maxey, of course, we all know that he's going to take his offer, but I think that he'll be the last one to sign just because of, cap space, unless it's someone with a minimum salary or whatnot. But I think that, he's going to be a guy. They're going to go after other people. They're going to sign people. And then all of a sudden, Maxey will be the last big deal that they sign, just because they have his bird rights and they want to get other people in there.
It almost feels, Keith, they're going down a similar road that they had last year. Guys on 1-year deals and hope to just recoup the cap space and try again next year. That feels like where this might end up.
It does, but you know what? This has to be the year to do it, because the thing is, like right now, you look at Maxey, his cap hold is $13 million. He's going to make, close to 40 something, right? He's going to make a lot of money, right? I think it's like 43 or whatever it is, or 41, whatever. I mean, I don't have the numbers on me, but let's just say he's getting
more money than you and I are making.
Yeah, more money, way more money. Like, hey, Tyrese, you want to trade lives? But anyway. So the deal is, like, right now, this is the time that you're able to have that space allotted, and you can get these guys and then sign them later. Once he gets signed, it's kind of like you're going to be in that Al Horford situation where you're going to have to, like, cut people, trade people, do whatever you can to create more space. And I get where people are saying, but look, Keith, there's going to be more money available because the TV revenue deals are going to go up. Yeah, but when they go up, the maximum salaries you can offer someone is also going to go up. So I feel like, unlike last year, where they had a lot of people coming off the books, right? If you have two guys with a max salary, you may be not screwed, but you may mess yourself up. Because Tobias Harris is off the books. Like, if they would have been messed up, if Tobias was making max, Maxey was making a max, and Joel. So Tobias is off the books. Maxey is basically taking Tobias's spot. So I feel like, and they got rid of James Harden's money, which freed them up to do certain things. So I just feel like the time is now for them to go out and get a third star. If not, I feel like they may miss out next year too.
And then, of course, you're running out of years on Joel Embiid's tires too.
Bingo.
Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. The draft in about 40 minutes. Round 2 begins a 4 o'clock start, and we'll keep our eyes on that throughout the show. Keith, it's good to catch up with you, buddy. Go Mountaineers.
Yeah, I knew you was going to say that. You lucky I have my pit stuff on.
Caught you on a good day.
Yeah, bad day.
I'll see you, man.
All right, peace.
Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer covers the 76ers.